Thanks everybody for joining us. This is SaturnDave. I've already got my pre-game drink on, and cheers, Bob. We got Bob from RetroRGB joining us just to shoot the shit about Saturn, and we don't really have any plans for this show. There's no. The biggest news this week is that today is basically like the Super Bowl of the Saturn community. Because Sega Extreme is hosting the 27th anniversary Sega Saturn Game Competition, and of course we've got an Emerald organized by Emerald Nova, of course, and there are several entries to that. And Pat is going to be doing like a 5-hour streamathon this evening, starting at 7 p.m. So yeah, this is kind of like the pregame show. We're just going to talk about Bob's favorite Saturn games or whatever.
Well, I definitely want to talk about the competition a little bit too, because hopefully there's going to be a few people jumping on watching this that maybe, heard of you and seen all of your podcasts or a bunch of your podcasts, but aren't 100% on board or like up to date, I guess, not on board with this. So the celebration started in 2019, and it basically is a coding contest for people to make their own homebrew on the Saturn, right?
Correct. Yes.
And there's like no, you're not making everybody play in one box other than the Saturn. So it could be anything anybody wants as long as it's something coded from scratch on the Saturn, right?
Correct. Yeah. Anybody, there's one category for original games. There's a category for patches and translations, and then there's a category for tools or utilities. And I apologize to anybody if the stream is kind of borked. I don't know. YouTube says I'm sending them more bits than it expects, but hopefully everybody's watching okay and everything's good. Yeah, so it wouldn't be a SHIRO show without technical difficulties. But anyway, yeah, getting back to what you're saying, it's a contest now that's been going on for this is the third year, and this is the biggest year. And with every year, the community grows and new people come into the scene, and it's just great. It just keeps growing and new projects. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just I'm scrolling through the post on RetroRGB that I read it yesterday when it went live, but I'm just kind of going back through it to see and just kind of admire the different submissions and the different stuff that you have on here. It was just it's so impressive what people do with just like just because they feel like it, right? It's like, I'm in the mood to do this, and then somebody says, oh, that's impossible, and they're like, oh, yes. Really? And then here you go. Yeah,
it's insane. So several years back, I want to say, I don't even know if it was like 2014, I think, Johannes Fetz, he kind of he developed this engine, this development kit called Joe Engine, and that kind of that kick-started people messing around on the Saturn, writing some C code, using the SGL, kind of getting their hands dirty with either 2D and 3D stuff, And then it just like went from there. Like XL2 downloaded it, messed around with it for a little bit. He had never done like a game like this, but like just started making stuff. And then you had the Sonic demo, Sonic Z Dream. I guess it was like Sonic X Stream, but it was like an ode to that. It was called Sonic Z Dream. He submitted that, and that helped him go from there to get better. And then on that engine, he started messing around with like a first-person shooter thing, and then that turned into Hellslave. And then before you know it, you've got like, Ponut 64 doing like a pony game, running around with like crazy moon physics, moon bounce and all sorts of jumping through rings and stuff like that. And then fast forward to like this past year, we had folks like Danthrax and Greg Lacquerware, who just kind of like reached out on our Twitter and were like, oh, we would really be interested in getting involved, doing like a game patch. And then they got started on Bulk Slash, and within 9 months, they were off to the races and put out one of the most amazing and ambitious patches that I've ever seen, in Bulk Slash.
Yeah, that was really incredible. And I'd sort of gotten to know Derek a little bit, Derek Pascarilla. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. My apologies. I'm notorious for getting everyone's name wrong, and probably mine sometimes too, so it's never intentional. I apologize. But yeah, I kind of got to know him over Twitter because he just messaged me one time like, hey, I watch your show and I think you'd be interested in this. And I was like, yes, I am interested in that. And I just kind of been following the work he's passed me. Most of it he's been a part of. Some of it he just kind of passed along like, hey, I'm aware of this going on. You might be interested, and it's kind of cool to see the different stuff people do. But the bulk slash thing was just nuts. And I mean, listen, if you have translated a title screen, I am indebted to you, and I thank you for that. But so I'm not trying to take away from other people's work, but holy crap, the amount of work that went into that one was nuts.
Yeah, it was absolutely
cool.
Nuts. And you had it's funny, you had some haters who are like the kind of folks who don't like dubs, and they were like, "Oh, you should have just done a translation and let that be that." But I'm sitting here thinking like, well, I've been playing bulk slash for years, the Japanese version, and it's totally beatable and enjoyable, right? In Japanese. It wasn't that kind of game that you couldn't play in Japanese. So it's like, if you really want that experience and you want a total weeb out, just play the Japanese version, for goodness sake,
Right, it's not like they're taking away the Japanese version. It's just that, I don't know. I immediately stop paying attention to people when they talk like that.
Yeah.
My favorite was a book aficionado that said, oh, I would never get a Kindle. The whole point of reading is you open the page and you feel the page crinkle, and I kind of teased her about it. It's a friend of mine for a long time. And then I show up at her house one time. I was like, what's that on your kitchen table?
No way.
And she gets all embarrassed. She's like, it's the coolest thing I've ever bought. I can carry every book with me, and when I finish one, I immediately start another. I was like, oh, what happened to crinkling the page? And you never owned one. And she's like, shut up.
It's so true. I mean, we were talking about this on the interview we did with you. We were talking about media and how you interact with it. It's nice to, for example, it's nice to have the Mister. It's also nice to have real hardware. It really just kind of depends what your thing is. And you could even do both. Like Pat, he's one of those guys, I know he loves to rock an iPod with a 60 gig or I don't know how many gigs. He's got a terabyte on there, actually, now that I remember. It's and he's got all this stuff in lossless FLAC, but at the same time he collects vinyl because he likes the ritual of dropping a needle on a record and collecting the boxes and stuff. So you don't have to limit yourself. You can do both, and I feel like what they did with the bulk slash translation was just, I haven't seen that. I have not seen that in any other scene, going that far to that degree. But yeah, this is really great. So I have to ask, what is your... Oh, sorry. I think you might be buffering a little bit. Let me see.
For me.
Yeah, okay, great. So what would you say your favorite translation or your favorite translated game has been? And it doesn't have to be a Saturn game. It could be across any platform.
I mean, hands down, I have one that stands above all of the rest, and it's the BS Zelda for SNES.
Oh, yes.
Where, much like Bulk Slash, a bunch of voice actors got together. A couple of pro voice actors helped too, and they redid the whole thing. And that's A Link to the Past is one of my favorite. That and Super Metroid are my two favorite games of all time, and it's just to have another way to experience that I never knew existed, and to the people's point that didn't like translations, if the voice actors were terrible, it would have taken away from it. So I do actually agree there, but the voice actors were so good that it actually made the written text, the text started to take away from it. No, now you're supposed to get sucked in and you're supposed to listen to the voice narrating, and then that one really blew me away. I really appreciated the heck out of that one. But there's been a whole bunch that I've played over the years, and it just I liked them all so much in the moment, but none of them made such an impact on me because I didn't grow up with one game to have a completely different perspective on it 30 years later. So that's the one. That's the real reason that one really sticks out. It's because I don't even think most people know what that is. I keep bugging a certain long-haired meathead to go and do a documentary about that. Who may or may not be a CDI fan.
In a bathrobe? He's got to do it in a bathrobe.
Absolutely. But yeah, I really hope, with respect to all of the amazing people out there, there's really only a handful that could pull off a documentary on that and get it right. I'm absolutely sure Pandemonium could, but it's not a Saturn game, so clearly that's not happening. So yeah, I think it's Yahel that I really would love to see, to just dive in deep and go full OCD and really get the stories behind both of them, because a lot of people get confused. There were two. There were the one with the original Zelda that was very good, but the SNES one was with the voice actors and everything.
Yeah, I absolutely love his videos. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I noticed Nick's videos in the first place, was that it was very reminiscent of Yahel. And like his catapult video that he did on the Netlinks, or not the Netlink stuff, but the X-Band stuff, one of my favorites. Yeah. I absolutely love that. Yeah. I've watched it a couple times, and his attention to detail and research is excellent. It's like second to none. So I really love it. Yeah,
that video stands out, and I mean this with all of, I love, we like teasing each other a lot. I mean this seriously, but I also mean this with all the respect in the world to him. I'm not sure if he'll ever be able to beat that one, only because the people that he interviewed in that were all so freaking likable. It's like what are the chances of you finding like 10 incredibly likable people and mixing it with a really interesting and passionate story? Like, it's going to be hard to top that one, not because of his skills as a documentarian, but only because like those were some awesome interviews. Like when they were blowing stuff up in the parking lot, like all those great stories where it's just like, man, that was really cool. That was worth watching.
That's part of game history too. It's like the stories that went on during the making of the games is the stuff that like a lot of us would never know about without documentaries like that. And it's like, if that stuff is lost to time, I think it would be a shame. Like, I think that's just as important as collecting all of the like physical ephemera, getting those stories down. Like Nick did this story with Mike Tolman about the virtual racing game, and just all the little tidbits that he gives you that really flesh out the development of that game and give me a greater appreciation for the game in general, So yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
It's funny too, though, because like those, the Saturn really also played into my favorite games, because I don't really know which one is my favorite, Zelda or Metroid, Super Metroid or Link to the Past, but some very close seconds are Daytona, Outrun, and Mortal Kombat 1, all arcade versions. So
nice. Yeah.
Daytona for me was one of those games where it was just like, I don't know why. Maybe what really drew me to it was the 4-player, but like what drew me to it was that. But what kept me coming back and keeps me coming back, obviously, isn't that one memory the first time I saw it. I think it's so much fun of a racing game, and it's the perfect combination of incredibly simple to figure out, but really hard to time, especially in the beginner track, timing that one sharp left-hand jump and riding behind other cars so that you get their drift, so you get an extra 2 miles an hour or whatever was programmed in. So I think for me, that was the Saturn for me. It was just like, I saw this amazing looking console with a halo and a light shining on it with the thought of playing Daytona just like in the arcade. So yeah, that for me was what really always wanted to draw me to the system. And then of course I found a lot of other stuff, and even now through following all of you, I've found games that I'm embarrassed to say I've never played, because when I hear you all talk about them, it seems like everybody knows about these but me. Like, I still haven't played Dragonforce. How weird is that?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's not that weird though, because it's weird, but it's not. The thing is, you can't be heavily invested in every single scene, in every single console. I've had my head stuck so far in Saturn for a long time that it's like, I don't really know a whole lot of what's going on in like the GameCube scene, for example. Like, I know the games are stupid expensive. I know that there's a lot of disc rot going on. I know that there's some absolutely phenomenal GameCube games, because I used to collect for GameCube and stuff like that, but I've just fallen off of it. So, because when you get collecting for an expensive system, you kind of go whole hog there, and you're not able to really pay attention, especially if you become a content creator in a specific scene. You have to pay attention to what's going on in that scene. So I don't really blame you for that. But Dragonforce is an excellent game that I think a lot of people get scared away from, because at the beginning it's very menu driven. And if you just get into those menus and you're just like, okay, so what is this game all about? You're walking on a map, you got all these like domestic affairs and stuff like that. You have to hold court and stuff like that. And, you know, at the beginning, it's kind of, I didn't know what to make of it. And I actually had to watch a tutorial by one of my friends, Chas Picardi, in order to really get into it. And then it was just like, after spending like an hour and like, oh, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Once you get into the battles and you start seeing all those sprites and stuff, it's a phenomenal game. I definitely, it went from like not on my radar to being like one of my top games for the Saturn, just like that. It's that good.
Yeah. But I mean, like, not, you know, I'm not sucking up because I'm here. Everybody who follows my channel knows I could be a bit of an asshole. I'm just being honest in that, like, that's why I'm so grateful for all of you, because I would have never found out about a lot of these games. And even Bulk Slash, like, I admit I had no idea what that game was. And then I saw the translation and I saw the game and I was like, another freaking mech game that you could play with the control. Like, my mind just... So I actually haven't even played it yet because I'm waiting till I'm at a friend's house that has the controller, so we could just sit down and make a thing about it. So, you know, crank up the stereo, you know, hear all the sounds, and I know I've seen the videos and stuff, and I just a lot of, you know, I'm kind of like that with certain things. Like, some games are meant to just be experienced anywhere. Like Tetris, you could do that on your phone, and it's 99% as good as everywhere else. But like stuff like that, like I want to do it on a CRT. I want to do it with some nice speakers. I want to do it with the controller. And
get the twin stick.
I don't always have the opportunity to, but I would love to do that with a friend that loves that stuff as much as me. A friend of mine, Destiny FOMO, I'm sure you guys probably heard of her, but her and her fiance are both big into Saturn. And like, if I lived in the city, like the day that if I still lived in the city, like if I hadn't moved, the day that thing came out, I would have like called up either Beast or Ben and been like, grab your controller. We're going over Destinies to play this shit. Like, nice. It would have been a thing. Like,
that would have been
just like met up. But
that would be a perfect game too for that. Like it's 1 to 2 hours maybe, you know, depending on your playthrough. And it, like you said, you're a big guitar fan, so you know you'll love like the soundtrack. Just it smacks, and turn it up to 11. You know, crank it up. It sounds great. You know, so yeah, that's definitely a game that would be fun experiencing with friends, and definitely playing with the twin stick. Yeah, thanks to Night of Dragon for patching that support in.
Hell yeah.
And all those guys for all the work that they did on it. And also Night of Dragon, I mean, Wachenroder, he just dropped that for the competition, you know? And that was that was kind of a brute force thing, because he said it was not an easy, like it was not one of those things where it was just, it's a very painful, slow process, and he had to like build several tools to kind of like automate the process for him, but of like inserting text and then making a bunch of tweaks to it. But I mean, there was a game that a month ago we weren't even talking about, a month or more ago we weren't even thinking that was going to be released, and then here you go, you know. we've got Wachenroder, and he's like made significant progress on it. And then Sam, the SSG, only a couple weeks ago announced that he was doing Gun Griffin 2, and now he's got enough text inserted that he just released an alpha for folks to test. So it's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. So
I see the chat. John said we need to have Dragonforce the band play Dragonforce the game.
That would be insane.
You know, I love Through the Fire and the Flames. That song is, you know, it's gonna be in my top 100 favorite songs of all time. Respectfully, I couldn't get into any other one of their songs. I'm so sorry. But did they get the name from the game? Because that would totally make sense based on their age, and they're obviously huge nerds. Saying that in a nice way, of course, but like, I wonder, is that where they got their name? Are there any Dragonforce fans that know the answer to that? Or?
Anybody in the comments? I would assume so. I've kind of always assumed so, but I never knew for sure. You know?
Yeah. Names of stuff, you know, they're so freaking important, and I was the worst at that. We wrote 15 songs, most of them with complete lyrics. 3 of them had names, and we didn't have a name for the band yet. We were all just terrible at that. So it's like, I can imagine them just being like, well, what do we call our band? To like, screw it, it's my favorite game. Like, let's play it.
Why not? What are you drinking there, by the way?
This is a Black Velvet Russian Imperial Stout, and this one's 9% alcohol, and it's very good. I really like this one a lot, but it's not my favorite. But the 9% alcohol thing, I usually like to start with it, and then this has been one of my favorites lately, a Pigtail Porter. And I got a window right here, and these things are the window leaks so bad that the beers are ice cold sitting next to it. So
nice.
yeah, that's why the past couple months.
It's probably cold where you
watched
are.
my videos, seen me like huddling in a hoodie rather than just my uniform of a black t-shirt. So
yeah, it's later where you are. It's only around 3 o'clock for me, so I'm doing I got a 24-ounce Asahi. This is my pregame drink because tonight we're going to be doing beer with pizza, so I'll probably go heavier tonight. But I love Russian Imperial Porters, like old Rasputin, stuff like that. It's good.
The darker the beer, the better. If most people look at it and be like, "Oh my god, I could only have one of those," that's like a meal. That's my beer.
That's your beer.
There.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
those
it's
are
funny. These
those are
things sneak
incredible.
up on you though too. Like you'll have like 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and like anybody that's used to having like 4 or 5, 6 lagers over the course of the night. I don't mean like in an hour, but like you get done, you're burpy, you're gassy and farty the next day, but like that's it. But these don't feel as bubbly. But then like you go home, you go to bed, and all of a sudden it's like the worst acid reflux on the planet. It's like, where did that come from?
It's the sugar that kills me.
Beer.
I love those heavy beers, but the sugar, especially if I drink late at night, it's like, oh yeah, it'll wreck me. And I'm not like diabetic or anything like that, but I think I'm probably borderline. It's just like you get too much of that sugar in your body, and it's probably worse than like the hangover itself. Yeah,
it's funny. The last time I had a physical, my doctor did my numbers, and he's like, "You're not pre-diabetic." Like, he looked at me like
he was surprised.
You wearing 5 or 6 shirts there, buddy? This doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, okay, so I guess we need to talk more about the competition because, like I said, we haven't really had any new news posted to our page since last show, and mostly we just been focusing on Pat and I focusing on getting our scores, getting our ranks in for the games. So for everybody that's watching, I do want to remind you guys that Pat will be going live tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific. That's 10 p.m. Eastern, with a 5-hour stream of just going through all of the competition entries. And before that, if that's too late for you, at 6 p.m., Murder of Crows, Murder of Crows is actually going to be streaming to the SHIRO channel, doing a rundown of Malenko's 6-man scramble wrestling. So if you like Fire Pro 6-man scramble and you want to know all about like what went into like making that a great translation, everything, Kay is going to break that down for you at 6 p.m. Pacific. So that would be 9 p.m. Eastern. And then of course, Pat will be going all night. Basically, he's going to be going 5 hours on Red Bull. So good luck, Pat.
Jeez. Yeah, good luck, Pat.
He's going to have all the developers.
Ever on was 6 hours, but it was during the day, so it was totally different.
I'm sure he'll have folks hopping in and out, helping him finish, helping him get through it. But yeah, so last year he did it, and it was amazing. And we ended up saving the VOD for everybody to enjoy, and that way you could just listen to the VOD at work and just hear basically like developer interviews, basically talking about everything that went into making a game or making a patch, what kind of struggles, what kind of obstacles they had to face. And it's very interesting. So we've had quite a few excellent contest entries, like Cube Cat. Have you seen that one, Cube Cat?
I'm scrolling through them now. Balloonatics gets my vote for best name.
Oh, Balloonatics.
I feel like that's a 90s ska band on acid or something. That's that's perfect. But
yeah, that's Slinga, and he does like, it's interesting. Last year he did Flicky's Flock, which was like a Flappy Bird kind of clone, but like with 12-player multiplayer. Like like you'd get 2 multi taps. Wow. Yeah, and and everybody's tapping, right? And so this year he kind of topped that with this balloon fight kind of game, but with 12-player multiplayer. It's crazy, So that's kind of like his angle at it, is like make like the most over the top multiplayer game on Saturn,
Yeah, What was the other game you just mentioned before?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So Cube Cat by Seven Shades. There's a polygonal platformer, which you didn't get very many of those on the Saturn. And
Okay.
it's super chibi, super cute, very, very bright and bold color palette, very tight controls, very good. You're just batting like this ball of yarn around, and you have to like bat it onto like different platforms, different island platforms, and you're doing a lot of jumping. You're doing a lot of he added strafing to it. It's just really, really solid game design, and it kind of came out of nowhere last year. Like nobody saw it coming, and then he's just improved upon it in many, many ways. And then of course you had Blue Skies this year, which was like a Pilot Wings type game from Team Starlane, and that's Xenos Interactive and also Emerald Nova doing a lot of the coding on that. And so that's like a flight simulator game, but with like really, really cool, kind of jazzy music, think like Windows 95 kind of, it's what else? Let's see. There's also an art game. There's like a Mario Paint style game called Sardist, which is like Saturn Artist, That's a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun to play with. And I'm going off of memory right now because I don't actually have the article pulled
Chris
up.
Mingle, a mall Santa dating sim.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that's bouncing off the culture of like the Sakura Wars dating sim type games, right?
Yes. So yeah, visual novel is what this is, and I mean I don't know exactly what kind of mechanics might be built into it. I think at this point it's more or less of a visual novel, but but again, like this was an entry that came out last year, and I think only a little bit has been done to it since then. So I think he's been really busy, but yeah, I'm interested in seeing what happens next. It's definitely one of those ones that has kind of become a meme among the community. We're all like, definitely gotta find out what happens with Mall Santa. But yeah, I mean, again, like all
that
of
style
these
of game is still kind of fascinating to me because the only ones like that I got as a kid are like Rise of the Dragon. For Sega CD, and then on Xbox there was Indigo Prophecy, and I really enjoyed both of those a lot. So I never did it from the perspective of like a dating sim type of thing, and I part of me, because I've remember ignorance is it's not a good thing, but it's a relevant excuse and stuff like this.
Exactly.
But, like, my initial thought of that's like kind of gives me the creeps, and I'm sure it's one of those things where as soon as I started playing it, I'd be like, oh, I completely get it now, never mind. But I'm just like, it's one of those things that's so foreign to me. I just have to approach it with a completely open mind and kind of go from there. But like,
absolutely,
a dating sim, is your goal to just get as many chicks as possible? Like I don't, I don't get it yet. So
yeah, I don't know.
But I'm not mocking it. I'm mocking me, just for the record there.
Yeah.
So.
There were actually a couple other Neuromage Studio or Sensagolo is the guy who uploaded both Lighthouse of Sao Bento do Oeste. I can't pronounce it, but it's like a murder mystery, kind of like you're a gumshoe detective. You go to this small town, you have to kind of like talk to people and reveal the mystery of why this person went missing. And he put out another one, which is a demo called Red Moon Lost Days, which again is another like visual novel type, visual adventure novel, I'd say. But yeah, similar but more fleshed out, stories. And they're both, I believe, using Joe Engine. So yeah, Joe Engine has helped a lot of folks like get up and running with Saturn development.
And for anybody who happens to just be jumping on and unfamiliar, could you just give like the 1 minute thing of what Joe Engine is? So yeah,
Johannes Fetz is the namesake. So Johannes Fetz developed basically like a software development kit for Saturn, so that you could, and a bunch of resources and even like a template game, that kind of would get you up and running, and kind of show you how to write graphics to the screen and how to put in some simple C code and get stuff up and running. And you can get really, really in depth with it. You can make something really, really simple. But I mean, basically, it's what a lot of folks have cut their teeth on in terms of Saturn development, including XL2, who's completely moved away from it and written his own renderer to drive his graphics, and now he's got like all these weird techniques that he's using in order to get like RTX style, I mean,
so impressive.
Yeah, it's so very impressive. Without any deadlines, without any, buddy breathing down his neck and saying, "Oh, we got to ship this game." He's had the time to really go well beyond what development teams were really able to do back then. So it's really insane to see that happen. And I think it's great because in the Dreamcast homebrew scene, it took a decade or so for us to start. I don't know, maybe that's too much, but it took a really long time for us to start seeing 3D games. We saw a lot of 2D shooters and stuff, on Dreamcast. But it was like, I'm surprised that it took people that long to like really dip their toe into like 3D development on Dreamcast. And now, of course, it's happening a lot more. But yeah, so with the Saturn, the scene hasn't really been that active for that long, and we've already got a bunch of 3D stuff going on Saturn. So I guess maybe people want a challenge because they've heard like how challenging it is to develop for Saturn,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just have so much respect and admiration for people that do that because I'm not smart enough to. So I am smart enough to burn an ISO and play the game after you finish it, though. So
exactly.
I enjoy all of those things.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I'm scrolling through here. It looks like there's a pony puzzler as well.
Oh yeah. So I believe that's kind of an in joke. Basically, they took all of the pony memes that were posted to the Discord, to the developer Discord, like over the course of the past year, and he was like, okay, I'll just make like a 15 tile game of all those. And I believe it's not safe for work, or at least there's a few images that are not safe for work. But
I'm sure it's not.
But you get the idea, And
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Night of Dragons patcher. One of the great things that he has made is a patcher that is literally like drag and drop, easy to use, and should be the de facto patcher moving forward. Of course, it does take some cooperation from developers, but it just makes things so much easier to patch games. And to add all of the extra, region changing the region and making there are several other, I'm drawing a blank right now, but there are several other features that it has in addition to just being able to rip a disk and create the image with the patch. So if you want to go that way and you have like a legitimate disk, you can just pop it into your PC and rip it and patch it at the same time, and it's just very, very easy.
Yeah, I'm also scrolling through your post again here, and a cloth demo just caught my eye because stuff like this is like, and once again, I mean this with all of the love and respect in the world. So if somebody's listening, please don't take this the wrong way. But something like this could very easily be passed over if it wasn't for a competition like this. Because if you didn't realize what this is accomplishing, you might just think, oh, neat, they did a cloth and a 3D renderer. But when you go in and you actually, anybody that's ever tried to develop on a console or has friends who have developed on a console starts to understand like wow, that's not normal, and that's not something that people would normally just jump in and do. So it's so cool to see competitions like this that be able to hype that stuff up and just give it some cool recognition, kind of like Demo Scene with the music and video stuff that started. I think it started on the Commodore 64. Everybody in Europe's going to be like, F you, it's not yet. But the Amiga probably
Commodore,
started on
Amiga. Yeah, the Amiga demo scene was amazing, and that was a hotbed for like just messing around with that Motorola processor and just making it do all sorts of crazy stuff. And actually, you're right, Ray, we call him Ray or Raymi. He did the cloth demo. He also did the one right under it, Sky Blaster, which was like their proper game release, which is like an endless shooter. And then if you scroll all the way down to the tools, they also released the the model converter, Saturn 3D model converter. So it's like folks can import a model from like 3D Studio Max or something like that and convert it to Saturn, or go from Blender. It's got plugins to support import and export of additional formats. So it's going to be a huge resource for the community to be able to like use that to import 3D models into their games and stuff like that. So absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was really, really impressed with their stuff.
The Saturn save converter is also something that gets me excited because it's like you have no idea. Like, once again, respectfully, that Saturn save converter is completely useless to you until the day you need it, and then you go, "Holy crap, it exists! This is the coolest thing in the world! I'm so glad somebody did it."
Yes.
And, I bothered my friends Risha and Super G to make me one for Sega Genesis to go between Mister and EverDrive and Mega SD or something like that. So, yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, "Oh, neat, there's a converter," but when you need it, that is a game changer. It's like,
absolutely.
So I get to start the game here, finish it here, or I can grab footage from this, but even though I'm playing it on that, like, that's props to everybody who works on stuff like that, because it seems so minor until you really, really need it. But
absolutely.
Super Ray must be a CDI fan, because the shape of the craft looks kind of like either. Depending on how you want to look at it, you could say it looks like a Romulan warship, or it looks like the one of the enemies in the missile scene of Thunder in Paradise.
I did not even notice that.
I wouldn't have unless
I see what you mean by the Romulan ship, though. Yeah, that's funny. Also, Pona released. They released Pwn Sound. I think I'm saying that right. Pony Sound or Pona Sound, which was a sound driver that basically went open source, and they gave to the community to use in their releases. And I know XL2 is using it in his game, and it's obviously being used in the Pony game. But I believe it's being used in a few others, and I'm drawing a blank on what those are. But still, it's just it has better performance than the ones that came in the development kit that Sega released. So it's just let's see. It also adds in the timing of PCM and ADX streams. It just does a bunch of other stuff that the Saturn couldn't originally do with the drivers provided. So that's great. It's great to have tools like that. And,
absolutely. I believe if it's French, it's Poney Sound.
Oh,
the
Poney
only reason
Sound.
I would even know that is because a good friend of mine, Renee from DB Electronics, likes to brutally beat me over the head if I don't put the tilde over his name when I'm spelling it in chat or something like that.
Got it. Poney Sound.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, everybody in the chat. I just I don't know.
Yeah.
So. Very cool, and I'm heavily involved with MD48 testing. Not so much on their Discord, just because I just have so few minutes to spare, so I don't chat as much as I'd like to. But testing audio equipment and testing, like, I've been focused on finding the equipment that we could all use to test consoles like the Saturn, in order to make sure that emulation is accurate, Mr. cores are accurate, because the audio in all of these is really important, and I took it for granted for so long. I mean, I had no idea how bad some of the audio emulation, or in some of the system on a chips, like these junky things. I had no idea how bad the audio was on them until I got back in the game and started messing with it. And I didn't, very ignorantly didn't know at first why people were complaining. And I'm like, so the audio is off 5%. Who cares?
Right.
No, it was off by a lot.
Yeah.
So I've been helping on the hardware side of things, because that's what I'm good at, and trying to determine what's good for doing the analysis. It's given me a new appreciation for all of the sound chips, as well as people like Remute who make albums on the different consoles and stuff like that. Like, I've gotten a completely new appreciation for how sound is created on all of these consoles, and the unique things that make them different. And it's so easy to be like, oh, well, Saturn's got CD audio, so it's just CD audio, right? And people forget that the chips that are in there also have the CD audio is the soundtrack. It's not the effects, and it's not a lot of the other things involved in it. So. Right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of Saturn games do use Redbook audio. But then Bulk Slash, for example, is a great example of a game that uses some CD audio, for the beginning, but then it uses a lot of chip tunes for the rest of the game. So yeah, and to a really good effect too. Oh, and Ray says that he used the Pone sound in Sky Blaster, so that's the one that I was thinking of. I remember
sweet.
reading that, and I was like, okay, that's awesome to see Pone sound work its way into more games. So yeah, but yeah, absolutely. Let me see here. Oh, and I absolutely agree with you about, poor emulation of Genesis. Genesis, it's been really hard to get an accurate emulation of Genesis sound. Also, each console sounds different technically, so it's like what's your target for perfect emulation,
not
right?
even each console.
Yeah,
it
like
comes
each
down
revision.
to the motherboard revision.
Yes.
Pat just joked about CDX, and that's another funny thing is the audio coming out of the headphone port of the CDX is way different than the audio that's coming out of the AV port. And even things like when you plug in your Sega CD, the audio coming out of the RCA jacks is different. When I say different, it's the exact same as getting it from the multi-out, but it's a different filtering or lack of filtering on there. So yeah, the Genesis is a mess when it comes to audio, an absolute mess. So
but Artemio Verbena has helped us out with an audio tool for that, right?
Yes, our Lord and Savior Artemio has created MD4A.
That's right.
There's a group of amazing people who have jumped on that Discord and who have helped out. I talked to Tian Fong pretty much every day for the past couple of years. So sorry, T. and Bernie's awesome as well. And the three of us tackle a lot of the hardware equipment side, just because I have access to a bunch of it. And with an IT background and a hardware analysis background, it's so much quicker for me to do that stuff than somebody who's super passionate and super smart, but where do I start? I already have a lot of how to get from point A to point D, and then I could start MD4A after that. So yeah, it's an awesome group of people, and they're making such a big difference. And it's also the look on people's faces when we talk about audio stuff. And I'm like, actually, we ran an MD4A analysis on your whatever, and it did very good, but here's what we found. And they're like, did what? What are you talking? And then I show them the graphs, and they're like, immediately feel about this big. And I'm like, no, it's a compliment. It's a compliment. But most people don't even know you have anybody has the ability to do these things. And that's all because, of the Fourier stuff and Artemio porting it and writing the software to make it used not just for video games. We test everything on that now. All of my audio equipment, HDMI splitters. Yeah.
Wow. I love the fact that he's not saying that there's one correct way to, because it's really subjective. It's like if you grew up playing, Model 2 Genesis, and that was your memory, and it was a specific revision, right? And that was your memory of how a Genesis should sound, right? That's what you're going to try to go after. That's the sound you're going to try to chase, And so his tool is really meant to help folks find that perfect sound that they want. And everybody's gonna have a different, hopefully you didn't grow up playing those cheap Genesis console on a chip.
I know.
But yeah,
Artemio was the one that taught me what's the best. Well, what's the best for you?
Right.
And what's the best for your setup, and what's the best for your budget, and what exactly are you looking to accomplish? Are you looking to chase the exact experience as a kid? Are you looking to chase the most accurate, or do you want a more he's so articulate when he speaks. I was just he's not an old man, but he's exactly sometimes when he gets in his groove, when Grandpa tells a great story and everybody just sits with their legs crossed and listen. When Artemio hits a spot, everybody just shuts the F up and listens and okay, what else do you have to say? And he really he so graciously kind of taught me that, and it completely changed how I approach everything in RetroRGB. So not just audio, but even what's the best way to play Super Nintendo? And I used to be well, you have to get this hardware and that hardware, and you don't need it, but if you want the best, this is. And now I take a step back and I'm let me think, what would Artemio do? And I kind of approach it from that perspective, and well, what's your goal? What are you looking at? So he's kind of an inspiration to many people in the scene. So it's cool that he's part of so many different projects. You hear his name dropped everywhere in the gaming scene. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's been the effect of his work has been far reaching, you know. And I mean the fact that he's got that tool on so many different consoles. I think the first time I used it was on the Wii, to be honest with you, because I was doing like a lot of 480p stuff, you know, and I was you know working with PC CRT monitors, you know, with the 31 kilohertz and stuff like that. So I was using that to help like dial in my linearity and geometry and stuff on those things. But yeah, it's just crazy because I really can't wait for the Saturn one to be complete, you know, but hopefully that'll come around, you know, but I know that that's not been one of the easy ones, you know.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I learned about Artemio and I discovered the 240p test suite because when RetroRGB was still a Google Doc that I was working on, I had this brilliant idea that like, okay, I want calibration and test patterns so that I can figure out things like basic geometry and basic color calibration. And I remember that Sega CD plays CDRs and it had CD plus graphic discs back in the day, which even in the 90s, they were kind of like, but maybe I could utilize that to take test patterns and put those on a disc. So I started Googling ways to do that. And I got really excited when I started to get clues. And then it led me to the 240p test suite. And half of me was like, oh, wow. Wait, no, this isn't just test patterns. This is everything. So that's actually how I learned about them, was trying to do it myself and realizing somebody just already did it way better. Nice.
Yes, you know, Saturn has a CD plus graphics support as well, and my friend Peter, SHIRO Peter, you know, he loves he has a couple of CD plus graphics discs that he's popped in the Saturn. I'm like, man, this is a very underutilized mode. There was not a whole lot, except for, you know, of course, like karaoke discs and stuff like that, I believe. But yeah, no, that's cool. So, I agree with Knight, who says
karaoke. Can you think of any CD plus G disc worth listening to and watching?
No, are you going to tell me the answer?
No, I was hoping you would tell me the answer.
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with any. No, and I think the only one. I think Disney releases like their music with CD plus G, and it's not. It's like, you know, music with lyrics. So I guess it is a karaoke disc, but they're more like they just have like different graphics screens, and then it plays the music. So it's like the soundtrack with the lyrics showing up on the screen. And I think that's what Peter was showing me an example of, like Frozen playing on the Saturn with the graphics. But I was gonna say
that's kind of neat. It's kind
of neat. I was gonna agree with Knight of Dragon that the Model 1 through the audio jack or bust. That's got to be the high definition graphics, though. You know, that's the one I have. But
yeah, I know this is a Saturn stream, but just a very quick thing. If anybody was really curious, Model 2 and 3, or the very last revision of the Model 1 actually had like a Model 2 board in it. Those all really need some kind of bypass to get good audio. Unless you're really longing for that tinny, shitty sound you heard as a kid if you had a Model 2. Yeah. But the Model 2 audio is excellent. And some models are good, but you really have to hunt them down. Whereas with a bypass, including the Genesis 3, is excellent. The Model 1s, other than the very last VA7 motherboard, all sound perfect without any mod whatsoever. The only reason that I ever suggest people, if they want to mod it, because I love original consoles exactly as they are, but if you want to go down the crazy route of modding it, I do suggest doing the full thing, because you have to remember, you're not going to really get better audio out of a Model 1, but now you don't have to put it out of the headphone jack. Now, if your headphone jack is old, usually whenever you bump it, you get that weird static, and you know, and you're talking about 30 plus year components that are being replaced by brand new surface mount components. And you also have to remember that when all of these companies made their consoles, they used components that were like 5 to 20% tolerant, depending on what the component is, because it was the right thing to do. If you lost $1 to $2 a unit on 20 million units, that's an insane amount of money lost for a difference that most people could not care about.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a bypass board, if that board's $3 more because you used better components, you're not going to care at all. And so it's just one of those things where you don't ever need to bypass the audio on the Model 1, but if you do, it's going to last longer. You might get a little less of a hum, a little less of a ground plane noise on there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm like, if you're going to do a triple bypass on a Model 1, it's a complicated install. So just do the audio too, because it'll get, you'll just get some more longevity out of it. And you might get an improvement, but it's more likely just less hum or buzz or anything like that. But just plug in a Model 1 headphone port, turn it all the way up, and then back it off a hair, and then put the headphone jack into something that's, that's 99.9% as good as you could imagine, and still have a real analog sound to it. So,
cool.
If you're a fan of that, if you like a crystal clear sound, get one of the FPGA solutions, or really good emulation like Blast-M. Not like at games. That was horrible.
Yeah, no, that was
Matt, the creator of Tanglewood created just a little thing where if you plug in Tanglewood into one of those at games consoles, like the writing is all red on the title screen, just to warn you, like, this is going to be terrible.
This is going to be terrible. Oh my god, that is great. I did not know that. That's funny. Yeah, those at game systems, and like all of the, no offense, Chinese clone knockoffs, like all those like cheap Genesis on a chip systems are just like terrible.
Yeah, so that's actually something I'm going to be doing a video on soon, because this one in particular is not trash. It's not good.
Right.
It's not good.
It's somewhere in between. Yeah.
Trash. Yeah. But a lot of them, like if you bought them and you're still within the return period to Amazon, you should bring it back. Like it's there. Some of them are just awful. Like the Hyperkin first edition ones. I haven't tested them in 3 years, but those were just, the best example I can give is if it wasn't an entertainment product. If it was a toaster, they would be forced to be recalled because you'd have half cold toast and half burnt to a crisp. They just don't work right at all. So yeah.
Cool. Well, let's see. My non-high definition Model 1 is the only one with good sound and headphones jack. It's pretty clean, surprisingly. So do you basically tell people to get the high definition version because then it's going to be, for a fact that it's going to be an early revision motherboard? Is that kind of the thinking?
What I usually say is, if you're chasing nostalgia in any way, get the one that you had when you were a kid and go from there. And if you plug in your cartridge and you play and you like it, you've won. Period. Don't listen to anybody else. If you like it, you've won. Original hardware, of course, not the at games bullshit. But if you grew up with that, I'm so sorry. But if you don't have a nostalgic connection to it, I normally get the one that says high definition graphics because you have the original audio chip. The sound will almost always be good, but the video is always off on those, and that's kind of the other problem. So it's really just what you're chasing, because if you're going for audio, Model 1s are awesome, but if you're going for video, a lot of the Model 2s and the Model 3s look excellent. In fact, the audio is even excellent on Model 3s, but it's mono. So if that doesn't matter to you, then beautiful. Buy a Model 3, you're good to go. If stereo audio is a big deal to you, which, some games really doesn't make a difference, others it definitely does, but, that's, you triple bypass a Model 3, now you have yourself a pretty damn amazing mini little Genesis thing, so.
Absolutely. What's your, I'm going to ask, Shadow Mass asks a question, but hold on a second. Real quick, what is your favorite Genesis soundtrack? I'm just curious. Do you have one?
So I didn't grow up with Streets of Rage. I played it a couple times at friends' houses, but it's such an awesome soundtrack. I really like it.
Yeah.
Sonic. I think the Sonic ones, all of them are the ones that I like whenever I'm testing a game, especially like Green Hill Zone, just because that's been my go-to testing for years now. So I try to do the same thing over and over so that I could always pick out the same stuff. But so for testing, it's Green Hill Zone. But for like an example of what an amazing Genesis soundtrack would be like, I'd probably have to say Streets of Rage 1 or 2.
Oh yeah. Like, do you play those in your car ever? Are you like a super nerd for like chiptune music where you could like bump it in your car?
So I absolutely play remutes music.
Yeah.
But I have spent 12 hours a day for the past like 10 years doing work on game console stuff.
So it's probably not.
If I listen to music, it's going to be metal, and it's stuff that I like to play on guitar. Now I actually love all kinds of music, so it's not uncommon for me at all to get like to listen to a K-pop song and then listen to Cannibal Corpse and then listen to like like Lady Gaga or Kesha and then go into In Flames or something like that. So, but yeah, it's I love games, but it's such a huge and all-encompassing part of my life that I try to step away from it whenever I'm not in the midst of it. So.
Makes sense. So Shadow Mask asked, what model Saturns do you use or prefer?
Oh man, I was hoping to duck that question. Not because of Shadow Mask. I like Shadow Mask, but I always get hate for this, and my opinion is based on a lot of testing.
Okay.
Generally speaking, if you go to a store and you buy a Model 1 or a Model 2 Saturn, you're going to get slightly sharper output out of a Model 1. And people hate me for saying that because just like Model Genesis, it's the board revision that matters. Model 1 versus Model 2 actually doesn't matter at all, except you have more likely of a chance of getting a board revision that has slightly sharper video output if you buy a Model 1 than you would a Model 2. So for me personally, and I like the way the Model 1 looks, and I don't know why. It's not better, it's just my personal preference.
It's slightly sharper, and I would agree with you. But I'd also say anecdotally, because I have a few Saturns, that Model 2s are a little more robust, or they last longer in terms of components and the laser mech. But again, that's anecdotal because I would have to have like 1,000 Saturns to really have a good sample size to say. It's just my personal experience. I've had better luck with Model 2s in terms of longevity. But Model 1, I definitely know what you mean about the image quality.
So I've been less vocal about that because when it comes to Super Nintendo and Genesis, there's probably maybe 20 people in the world that have tested more than me. But when it comes to Saturn, there's like 100 people that have done more in depth with more of them coming in front of them. Like I probably had 100 Super Nintendos and at least all models combined, 100 Genesis consoles come through me for testing since I started RetroRGB. I probably had 25 Saturns, but I also talk to people every day who use the same test equipment, who use the same test procedures, and they all have confirmed that it's much easier to just be like, all right, let me grab that Model 1 and hope it's sharper, and it usually is. So
I should probably say for those listening, disclaimer, there really is no such thing as a Model 1 or a Model 2. When we say Model 1 or Model 2, we are talking about the chassis. We're talking about the shell.
Case.
Now there were so many different board revisions, right? That when I say Model 2s have better longevity, what I'm saying is the majority of board revisions that went into that chassis, I've had better luck with, right? But really, there's like, there are a ridiculous amount of models out there. So it is kind of silly to say Model 1 and Model 2 because, you know, which board revision are we talking about? You know, that's the thing too. There were more than a few Model 1 board revisions. So, you know, that's the thing. A Murder of Crows, Kay, he gets really mad when I say Model 1 or Model 2. And I just remembered I needed to let people know that technically it's more complicated than that. But definitely, like you said, like I was saying with the high definition graphics Genesis, if you have a high definition graphics Genesis, you know you have a very early motherboard, right? So you can pretty
unless somebody did a case swap, but
right, exactly. So it's kind of like a general. It's like a very general way to judge something. It's not scientific unless you open it up and see what you actually have. Yeah. So. But anyway, I felt like that needed to be said. Otherwise, somebody in the comments will be like, "Well, actually."
And I'm glad you said it. And all the trolls over the years, if they had said, "Hey, Model 1 and Model 2 is a shell, not a motherboard," my response would be, "You're 100% right." But it's just something to visualize because, you know, it's hard to tell people. You have to completely disassemble a Saturn to figure that out.
Right.
Some of the Saturn motherboard revisions are on the bottom of the board, so you gotta flip it over and all that. So yeah, but that's not usually the trolling. It's usually Bob's a liar, there's no difference. It's like all right, whatever. You can go jump off the ice wall then, you weird flat earther. But yeah, so but I mean, not all Model 1s are awesome. If you ever see the ones with the power supplies bolted to the case, you open one of those up and it's like, man, like Sega really sucked sometimes. Like, how did they? It must have been like, okay, well, we're running out of stock and we have 5,000 in the warehouse. So Jimmy, Billy, and Johnny, go glue some shit together and get them out the door. Like, you know. Yeah, it's weird to see some of the stuff they've done over the years. The entire Master System motherboard, the NTSC version, is a conundrum. Like, because I am not a board designer and I am not that smart, and even I'm doing an analysis on it. Like, they ran the trace under the chip. Like, what are you kidding? This is why people use shielded cables, so that you keep the trace away from the chip. Like, I know. Yeah, so
I know. Oh yeah, there's like some of those Saturn power supplies too, and there's just like a tiny little piece of plastic between it and the motherboard, you know. And the Model 1s, when you take them apart, some of them you just have to be very careful because the power switch and everything has its own little daughter board, you know, and it's got like the cables you could just like rip. You know, I do appreciate how much they were able to streamline things and really not just cut costs, but also make it a much more elegant design. That if they could have just, you know, spent a little bit more time on it to begin with, you know, and waited, you know, then, you know, things would have been a little bit different. But definitely each model kind of has its own charm. And I have a handful of Saturns and they're all different board revisions. So yeah.
Peter Gaio said it's because Bob likes the giant Model 1 controller. I do. I like them both, but like
nothing wrong with
sometimes that. Like I just, you know, I got big fat hands. I probably should be a bassist. I don't know why. I like rhythm better than lead anyway, but you know, I'm a guitarist either way. But yeah, I like I like them both, but very often I'll go to the Model 1. And Sega Retro View.
Yeah, Retro View.
Sure I'm so sorry. I know I murdered that one. Was talking about. I just lost my place. Maybe the beer's kicking in. Their high Navi Saturn still works fine, despite being the only Saturn that doesn't output RGB. So, two things. You can pretty easily add RGB back to it, and it's fully reversible. So there's no cutting. There's no there's not even cutting of traces. But I wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, but after seeing all the amazing things that I've seen, I just have a new appreciation for those rare and weird models of consoles and just loving them for exactly what they are. But that's only my stupid opinion. So if you want to add RGB back to that, I'm sure we could figure that out pretty easily. So
Pat wants to know if you think the OSSC Pro is a RetroTink killer.
So, my answer is going to sound like all PC and bullshit, but it's actually my very honest opinion is that there is no killer anymore.
Of it. Yeah, exactly.
The original RetroTink 2X didn't have a comb filter, went to 480p, and you could very easily say that the RetroTink 5X is the original 2X killer. And that's totally fair, but and Mike Chi might even agree, the creator of both of those.
Right.
But the reason I don't agree is because the original is still a line doubler with zero lag that does exactly what it was designed to do.
Right.
So the OSSC Pro is the same thing in that it's adding more things and more options and different ways of doing it. But the original OSSC isn't any less awesome. It's still a zero lag line doubler.
Right.
And if your TV is compatible with it, then or capture card, because a lot of capture cards aren't, then it's cool. But I gotta say, I've tested all of them but the Morph. I think the Morph is still in very prototypey phase. But the Tink 5X is amazing. The OSSC is amazing. The OSSC Pro, I've never seen analog video look that good. And when I say that, I'm not shitting on the RetroTink 5X. Remember, I do this for a living. My eyes are built to analyze this stuff.
Right.
But it is pretty good for that. But what I'm really wondering is, you know, I'm actually glad it was delayed, because I don't know if anybody saw it today. It was announced that it's on hold indefinitely. It will come out, but they're just waiting for the part shortage to end. And the part shortage is real. There was a whole bunch of comments that the part shortage isn't real. I don't. Yeah. Once again, go jump off the ice wall. But
my wife is an electrical engineer. She can tell you it's definitely real. She's had to substitute so many different parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could personally tell you 5 different projects that were going to be released last year that might not ever be because of that. But but you know, I'm kind of glad because they would have sold a lot less quantity. People would have been really pissed because they wouldn't have been able to get one, and it would have been way more expensive. But also, this gives Marcus time to go back and to do the firmware the way he wants without a deadline. So the hardware is done, the base firmware is done. If anybody bought it in its current form, they'd be like, this is really awesome. But when you have the RetroTink 5X and the Morph and even the the Mister out there, you gotta have more than this is awesome. Like, if you want to make a difference, you have to go, well, what are the other two don't do, or what could I do better? And you know, Marcus is a really smart guy and a very cool guy too. I really enjoyed hanging out with him. So it's like, you know, I'm kind of glad it got delayed, because when it gets released, I guarantee you there's going to be people that go, oh, for me, the Tink 5X is the only one. Oh, for me and my setup, the Morph is the best thing I could ever imagine. Oh, for the things that I'm going to be connecting, the OSSC Pro is the best thing I could do. And and I love that. I love that because, you know, there's always going to be competition, whether you like it or not. But I love it when the competition is a bunch of really good people, all working to do the same, but in their own way. So that it's not, no one's cloning each other, no one's copying each other. You know, I think
honestly, you have to say, for those that don't even want to get too technical and they're really going off of like what's available, you really can't go that wrong. Like, they're excellent products. You're going to be happy, you know. So it's like we're talking about those people who are like really anal over like tiny differences. But I mean, I think for most people who might just be, I just want my console to look good on my new flat panel, you know, and I just want to be able to see something that's close to what I saw when I was a kid, you know, and be able to enjoy these games with zero lag, or as close as you can get to zero lag. I think most people are going to be fine with either option, you know. RetroTink definitely hits me as kind of like being a more mass market. It has more mass appeal. Like OSSC is definitely like a, you know, it seems like its pedigree is based on like folks in the forums and stuff like that, and folks who are like really dialed into this stuff. Whereas like RetroTink, Mike's made it like very accessible, very open to, you know, being a product available for purchase by even folks who don't want to get that technical into it. You know, they're just like, well, it's available. I'd love to pick one up, you know, and it makes a huge difference.
You can still buy the Tink 5X, plug in your console and turn it on, and never
be
touch
blown
the
away.
remote.
And be blown away. Yeah.
And never have to worry about any of that stuff. Like, it's still something that you could do. And if you're the type of person that's annoyed with tinkering, you could only go into the menu if you have a problem. So like, if you got Genesis, Super Nintendo, Saturn, Dreamcast, you don't even touch the remote. If you have Neo Geo and something gets weird, or Master System, you can go in and you know, look up the fix and implement the fix, which is not a RetroTink problem. It's a Master System and a Neo Geo problem. So you don't need to touch the remote. And I think Pixel FX is trying to go down the road of it'll auto detect everything, so you don't even need to do that, which might be neat. But you know, a large part of me really thinks, like, and I could be wrong, but I think the OSSC Pro should be catered to those incredibly smart eye for detail forum people as a tool, and you know, price it accordingly. But like, maybe that is the device that's designed for the developers, or for the ultra crazy streamers. And you know, I got a friend, we joked, but like, somebody had just set up an arcade machine, it just rebuilt it, and he walks in and they had the color bars up, and he's like, green's off by 4%, and everybody burst out laughing. They thought he was just busting balls, and they threw it on the scope and green was off by 4%. They're like, what the hell? So then we call him the human scope, and
he's got a human scope. Well, I mean, I guess if you look at that shit that much, you know, then you probably, I mean, but yeah, it's like to most lay people, okay, you're going to be happy with a PVM, right? You're going to be happy with a BVM. You might even be happy with a medical grade monitor, right? But I mean, the amount of quality between these things can really only be appreciated by somebody who's like been looking at all this stuff for a long time and really knows like, okay, like the different line count and stuff like that. But I mean, your average PVM is still way better than you know, any consumer grade set, right? So it's like for most people, I think, you know, it's just one of the, for most people, I would just say get what's available, you know, but I mean, for people who really want to go get something that's reference grade. And that's the thing. I think a lot of us are kind of geeks and we want to get to that, you know, perfect holy grail reference grade, you know, and like you said, like something you use on your test bench should be able to, you know, look at things very, very closely. But yeah.
So for years, the choices were the least worst, really. Yeah. Because there were some good choices, but they were super expensive. So, or they weren't compatible with everything. So, but nowadays, there's really, as long as you don't buy garbage like the level height cables, and I'm looking in the chat, I'm so sorry, I'll get to that in a second, but as long as you don't do that, you're winning. Any of the TIG products, anything branded OSSC, you know, anything from Pixel FX, the crew from Pixel FX is just as nuts as we are. They're not going to release something that isn't awesome. It's not who they are. But what's odd about the level height product is most of the companies selling those very crappy, you know, console to HDMI adapters are rebranding the exact same thing. And some of them go in and take the time to change the boot screen to their own logo. Right. So you would think, okay, there's still room for tweaking. Whatever Young is his name. Whatever Young from Level Hike did, not only did he add his name to it, Level Hike, but there is more lag than any of the other one of those console cables. It's like 5 to 7 frames of lag or something like that. It was horrendous.
And the left and right audio were switched on the one that I was sent. And I was like,
and they use composite video sync on consoles that I mean, it's just so, and using composite video sync is not a problem, but just shield that one line. Nope. That's why you get the weird diagonal bars over it. I mean, and they were the same company that did the Warrior 64 that I like. What? All right, let me try to politically correct this one. So I messaged them and said, hey, this thing looks awesome, but you got to get a bunch of things right, otherwise you're basically going to be stealing people's money. A bunch of people are here to help. There's some open source designs that are out. Yes. Would you like it? And they basically were like, well, it's already in development. We could send you one. And then I'm like, okay, but here's what I'm going to test it. Here's how I'm going to test it. Ghosted me. And then Metal Jesus, shout out, was like, hey, I got one of these pieces of crap. You want to test it? I was like, oh, yes, sir, I do. So he tested it, and they sent it to another reviewer and were like, I don't know if it was the reviewer's idea. Young from Level Hike does not, I don't know them, but they don't really strike me as the type to do this. But the reviewer was like, Bob was lying. This thing is perfect. Bob was looking at a pre-production unit and everything else. So I was like, all right, man. You want to play this game? And I tore that sucker apart. I showed why it didn't work, how it could have been better, all the mistakes they made, how you could fix it yourself. And then I followed up and had a bunch of people test their production versions, and it was all the same. And Level Hike follows me and likes a lot of my posts on Twitter.
Yeah, that's so weird. Instagram. That's so weird too. You're like, what is going on there? I give a composite cable better scores than level than a Level Hike. Here's the thing. I shake my head to search for a use case for Level Hike, and I'm thinking, okay, I have a couple. You want a cheap 20? You're in a hotel room with a panel that does not have any other inputs except for HDMI, and you need the absolute cheapest thing to display Saturn. I don't know, because you want to make sure that it's not broken or something. I don't know, like, because other than that, you're killing the game, you're killing the experience. And I hate being a gatekeeper, okay? Like, I love saying people enjoy things the way you want to do it, right? But if it comes at the expense of the game experience, I have to be honest with you and tell you what you're playing is not the original game. That's not how it played. So don't judge that game harshly based on the fact that there's so much lag, or based on the fact that the sound is off. That's your hardware there, not the game, you know? And so that's the thing that bugs me.
What bugs me is that they market it as a great solution for gaming. Yeah. Like, we got Night of Dragon in here saying they need it as a cheap second device for their TV that does pop display to play 2 Saturns. Great.
Right, because
if your favorite games
right.
excuse me, if your favorite games are digital novels or turn-by-turn RPGs,
Right.
it's not going to be as, you know, you're going to get some interference on the screen and your audio might be reversed, but lag never matters with those games.
Right.
So absolutely, if you're on a budget, that's great. Or if you're somebody like the person in the chat that probably ended up with when they said total noob over here, so I'm not going to call them out because I don't want to embarrass them. That's not the goal of this. But like, if you're getting started and you know, hey, I'm on a budget, I just want to be playing on my TV now.
Yeah,
they're great. The only problem I have is that they're marketed as the solution. And when you go into a mom and pop store and they're like, hey, this thing sucks, but it's super cheap. Some customers will be like, oh, well, yeah, I'll try it and see. And others will be like, you're lying to sell a more expensive thing, or whatever. And some will listen. But the bottom line is, if you're talking to somebody and there's that human interaction, it's like, okay, I get home, the games all suck. And it's like, you know, I played these. They didn't all suck. There's no way they all sucked. And then you go back to the game store and you're like, I think you were right.
Yeah.
What's next? And then so I grab a tank, grab one of these, grab a CRT off the side of the road for free, like whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's the problem with these, you know, these online marketing is how would anybody know they were bad unless somebody told them?
That's the thing is it's like most gamers are not like us. Most gamers are not as plugged into like all this stuff. Most gamers are coming to it, maybe they haven't even messed around with these consoles for a long time, and they're just like, I need a very cheap and easily available entry point, you know? And that's probably the only thing the only good thing, no offense, that I can say about the level hike is that it's kind of like you said, a gateway drug. Because before the level hike, we had level hike before level hike. It was called this little Chinese black SCART to HDMI converter. That's basically what it was, a very, very cheap and also equally crappy SCART to HDMI converters. And that's kind of how I got in with the Saturn, originally trying to get the Saturn to HDMI with RGB. And, you know, so many steps later, and now, you know, I've gone way, way down the rabbit hole. But I mean, you know, I guess you could say that was my entry point, you know? Yeah,
and, you know, my problem... my problem's with the people, not the hardware, I guess, because I did a video called The Worst Scaler in Retro Gaming about that SCART to HDMI device, but I labeled it that just to draw the line immediately, like, here's what you're getting into. But I also spent like half of that video showing everybody a bunch of really good things that you could use it for.
Right.
And it was designed for like DVD players and VCRs, which it does an amazing job on for the price. For that money, like if you really have an old RGB SCART DVD player or VCR or something, it's awesome.
Right.
It's just not for games. So I blame the reviewers that were too dumb to just look up what the thing was used for and do anything with lag. But it's the you know, the level hike cables, right? And I keep using them as an example just because we talked about it in the chat. But
it's just one name, Blaze, right?
Level hike's not the problem. There is one company that started all of this, and
what is it?
One of these days the truth will come out. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I'm not allowed to tell the proof, so I'll wait till that person wants to expose that. There was a scandal or something, but like those cables are marketed as for retro consoles,
right?
So once again, the cable it uses a chip meant for TV signals. Yeah. So like, you know, turn by turn RPGs, maybe FMV games would probably be fine, but not for gaming. That's kind of the thing. Yeah. Somebody's talking about the Rad 2X. Yeah. So the only two negative things is they're impossible to get because part shortage, everything else, but and they only go to 480p. But one of the really awesome things is I know so many people with badass setups, like BVMs that are calibrated and OSSCs that are dialed in to like the sub-pixel of everything, that bought a Rad 2X for every single console because sometimes they just need to bring their console to a friend's house, right? And they'd rather use it in only 480p with zero lag and one plug to plug in and nothing else. So I try to always be clear that like the Rad 2Xs, depending on how you look at them, are either absolutely amazing and everything you can ask for, or like it could be better, but you got to put that into context, right?
Yeah.
Plugging just a plug and play solution with zero lag that processes the imaging correctly is amazing. It's just not as sharp. So.
It's kind of like looking at, it's kind of like scrolling Stone Age Gamer and looking at Crick's carts, you know? And I'm just like, well, these are all amazing, but like, do I spend $80 or do I spend $300? You know? Like, I mean, there are different levels of awesome, you know? And I mean, like, the Rad 2X actually works really great for a bunch of people, you know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Crix carts are cool too, because it's like, do you already have a Sega CD? Do you really just want to use the discs you own? Get an X5. They're freaking cheap and awesome.
And then right in the middle, Yeah,
do you want everything? Get the X7 or the Terra Onion one is good too. And you know, they each have the thing that's like a little bit better than the other for certain things. And the only one for me personally, and you know, I don't want to offend the N64 community, but the more expensive one just doesn't make sense unless you're a hardcore N64 fan. Yeah, because it doesn't really give that much of a difference.
Kind of a placebo if you don't use it. It's just kind of like a, you know, you feel like you got the best one, but then it's going to be superseded anyway. So, you know, you might as well just get the one that is right down the middle, and it makes the most sense for most people, you know. But yeah, like you said, if you are an Uber 64 fan, then you just go whole hog, because that's the one you're going to get anyway. But yeah, I know I'm the guy like kind of like sitting there trying to make a decision between like middle of the road and like just going all out, because I don't want it to be, you know, I want it to be future proof, you know. Right.
Funny, Danthrax. Sorry, Danthrax. Gonna call you out on this one. Hooked up via composite directly to their 58-inch 4K TV. So here's the problem. Every single flat panel TV I've ever measured has like 5 times the lag from the analog inputs. And, you know, maybe sometimes it's 3 times the lag, but whatever else. And it doesn't make sense, because analog to digital converters should be 0 lag. But if you take a TV and you put composite video 240p into the composite jack, most of them are over 100 milliseconds of lag. In game mode, of course, all processing turned off. Take that same 240p signal, and you even put it through like a Tink in pass-through mode. So it's in HDMI, but it's still 240p. It's like 18 milliseconds lag. Perfectly reasonable, totally good gaming experience. So you might want to buy anything on the market.
Anything on the market to get that lag down. I know. Yeah, because you want to, you really want to process it before it even hits your panel at all.
I mean, once again, if you're playing turn-by-turn RPGs or if you're doing those awesome visual novels, then what I just said is useless. But if you're playing anything where the button that you press has very importance to what's going on screen, that don't do that.
I know Danthrax is
not teasing you, Danthrax. I'm a fan of the stuff that you work on. I'm just trying to help you out, man. This is you know, I'm in the trenches with this stuff, trying to help people dig themselves out of it.
There's different kinds of fans, though, for sure. It's like there's us that like you know,
Wait, hold on. Dantrix, they're feeling attacked. They do own several CRTs. They're just not in their living room. All right, well then you've won. That's how you do it when you're in your living room. So sorry, Dantrax. Continue, dude. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just saying, like, I know that there are those who we stress over every little pixel, every little frame of lag, and then there's other folks that are just like really couldn't care less, because they're just more about like the development side of things, and it's like all they care about is like working with some graphics library or something like that, you know. And it's like they think of the actual console and the TV as more of like a burden, or like I have to, you know, because they're mostly like working on an emulator, you know, and then it's like, okay, I actually have to like build this and put it on this console to make sure it actually works on the darn console, you know. So you know, it's just funny how people think of things differently, and there's a lot of different types of gamers out there. So I do recognize that there are those who just like go straight composite into their LCD and just say, you know, whatever. But yeah, like Bob said, you could almost get anything and it would be better than that, you know. And that's the thing is, it's the ignorance, and I don't mean that in a bad way. The whole ignorance is bliss kind of thing. It's like, if you don't know, you won't really know until you see what's better, and then your mind will be blown. You'll be like, oh my god, this whole time it could have been looking like that, you know, which is I will say, those level height cables, for people who don't know and they see them the first time, they see the RGB, you know, and they are like, wow, I've never seen Saturn look so good in terms of the colors, you know, because RGB is RGB. On the title
screen, they look beautiful.
Yes, on the title screen, exactly, you know, but that's where, and I think that some people they're like, okay, that's cool, and I mean, if they're already used to the lag of a LCD with composite, then, you know, maybe they don't notice, but yeah.
You know whose fault this honestly is, and I'm not kidding at all?
Okay, whose?
TV manufacturers.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you think about it, what devices would continue to be supported when VCRs and DVD players start to get phased out? Video games.
Video games, yeah.
So why does nobody not know that? Why does nobody pay attention to that? And that's, you know, a lot of my friends have reached out to, you know, and reached out in the right ways to these companies, and they don't ever get responses. Right? It's just the weirdest thing in the world. You know, if any, especially if a company like LG that makes those amazing OLEDs, if they ever advertised a retro gaming compatible TV, do you have any idea how many they would sell?
Right.
They would even sell them to people who like the idea of maybe getting into retro gaming and never freaking do. Like, they would absolutely. They could tack on an extra $200 to the same damn TV, and it doesn't cost anything too. That's the other part.
That's why Micomsoft and the FrameMeister was so important for its time, you know, because it was pretty much the only company that was paying attention to the gamers, you know, and you know, there were several devices, like Fudo would point out, that could handle 240p correctly, but then again, with varying results, you know. Micomsoft was really like game focused because it's a Japanese company, and they had a pedigree of, you know, creating game peripherals and stuff like that. So it was like they really had that focus to begin with. Now, fast forward several years, and we got like Mike Chi, we got the OSSC, you know, Marcus, and now there's these game focused devices that really hone in on. And they'd probably be terrible for video. You know, it'd be terrible for, you know, DVDs, but they're great for, you know, that like nearest
sharp
naval
scaling versus smooth scaling and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, so look, 9% alcohol just hit me like a 9-year-old. So
we need to wrap the stream.
Some questions from the chat.
Oh yeah,
and I will be right back. Let's get some questions. And large man, little bladder. Be right back.
Large man, little bladder. Yeah, actually, we are over time for the stream anyway, so we'll go ahead and field some questions, then we'll wrap it up. I just want to remind everybody while Bob's gone to the bathroom that Kay, A Murder of Crows, will be streaming Malenko's Fire Pro S 6-man scramble at 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. Eastern, and he'll be going through just everything there is to know about, like what made that patch and what made it great, you know, from last time and everything like that. And then you'll have Pat doing the streamathon tonight for 5 hours. He's starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, and going, you know, 5 hours, or I guess whenever it stops, whenever they're done, you know. He's going to have several of the developers in the homebrew community on with him, talking about, you know, patches, original games, and everything like that. So Night of Dragon asks 10. So as my understanding, it was 7 p.m. Pacific.
No. It wasn't a question.
Oh, okay. All right. Until when? I gotcha. Okay. That wasn't a question. That was 10 till when? Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, so just join Pat at 7 p.m. Pacific, and he'll be doing the Super Bowl Streamathon, Super Saturn Bowl Streamathon, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm sure that I'm going to probably be listening to the VOD on that because I'm probably going to be, you know, asleep during most of it. But anyway, you know, kudos to Pat for taking that bullet. And he did an amazing job last year, and I think he's going to do an amazing job this year as well. We got Bob back.
Sorry, large man, small bladder. Everybody's always made fun of me for that, but I deserve it.
I get it. I'm actually holding mine right now. So yeah, we were just reminding folks to tune in at 7 p.m. for the streamathon. Pat's going to be playing a load of original games from the community and patches, and I'm not sure which ones he's going to start on first. It'll probably depend on what developers are in the chat at the time. But anyway, You guys,
Well, look, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there are 40 people watching, and only 20 likes.
I know, right?
Fans. Come on, everybody step up. I actually forget it all the time on all of my friends. If it wasn't for somebody who mentioned that before, I would have never mentioned it. So
yeah,
I don't know if the likes actually do anything, but hey, let's throw up a thumbs up.
Absolutely.
And,
like the stream, share it out, and that can help. And I definitely let's field a few more questions and then let's wrap this because we're actually like over time for a normal Shiro show, but it's totally fine. Yeah, we usually go an hour, but since I had you on and we were having a good conversation, I didn't want to end it. But
sorry, we do really naturally. So.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's why I was just like, we're just gonna keep going. But yeah, let's answer a few more questions, and then I'm going to go ahead and thank our Patreon supporters and roll credits.
Okay, well, Ray wants to know if there's anything cheap or reasonable for 720p for Saturn to HDMI. Not really. So you can get 480p from a Rad 2X, and depending on your model Saturn, you might need to like break the tab and use a USB power. There's a couple that have weird power issues with the multi-out. But it's zero lag and it looks totally fine. The other thing that you could do is just get you could get one of the like an OSSC. You can get them used for pretty cheap, but the only thing I would suggest is either buy them used and hope that you get a good one, or buy it direct from Video Game Perfection, because there's a bunch of OSSC clones. I hate to say clone because it is an open project, but they're very low quality, and a lot of people have had trouble. They can't update them. They just break after a week or something. So, I really am. I'm working with a whole bunch of people, and I'm trying to get devices out that are exactly what you're looking for, but it's a trade-off. Do you want zero lag and process totally fine, but 480p, or do you want 1080p, but you got to spend a little bit more money? But you could use one of those scalers with multiple consoles. So it actually, if you bought a RetroTank 5X, even the $300 one, and you had 10 consoles to connect, that's actually much cheaper than buying a cable for every one of them. So
yeah, NeoZ brings up the GBS. I know those were like decent. Decent, I think is a fair word.
Here's the thing. GBS control is freaking awesome, but there's a but. If you could mod, then holy crap, what a cheap and amazing solution. Yeah, there's some interference because it keeps everything in the analog realm and you got to go to digital, but there's no lag. There's so many freaking features on it. Rama did a brilliant job, but if you can't mod, that's the issue. You gotta find somebody that can do it for you, and all of the really good ones out there are always sold out because they go so quickly. And that's the only reason I don't say that first for people on a budget. And it's not the hardest thing in the world to work on, but if you've never soldered anything before, it's like that would be a nightmare. It would be, you'd have to do it 3 times before you got it right, and it's just one of those things. Or you could get lucky, I guess. But
I think of that as like the
$20.
I think those is like the go-to for like arcade operators that are trying to like slam those into a cab with an LCD. But then why would you do that as an arcade operator?
Yeah, it's basically anybody that's worked with Arduino and can solder will take one of those and go. I've heard a lot of people call it the OSSC killer, which is definitely wrong. But if you take price into consideration, $30 if you can solder it yourself versus anything over 30, it's like, I totally understand it. And holy crap, if you're going to a VGA monitor like how you do it, going through a GBSC is like it's all in the analog domain anyway. So it's
but then you've got the cost of the monitor, so consider that. But I mean, if you can find a good, like, I don't know, 19-inch CRT or dare I say 22-inch, but if you can find like a good 19-inch PC CRT, there you go. And for cheap, I don't know, somebody might not know what they have. We're getting on into that area where it's like, forget it about PVMs or BVMs. Everybody's going to have their asking price, but with PC CRTs, it's like people are kind of coming around. But it just depends on what city you live in, and whether you're on Craigslist or OfferUp or something. You might find somebody getting rid of one. Maybe a hospital, maybe a private electronic sector where they're just upgrading everything to LCDs, and they might be getting rid of one. I would just say, keep your ear to the ground and just see what you can find. But yeah.
But overall, honestly, though, if somebody is on a budget getting into this, and you could solder GBS number one, if you can't, just seriously consider any CRT at all. If you live in a big city, if you're in the middle of Manhattan, you're stuck with, you can't use RF. It's unusable.
Right.
But even slightly out in the burbs like I am now, RF looks exactly like composite. If you're in the middle of a big city, get at least composite, but you could still find them free everywhere. Just don't pay attention to the scumbags selling, the basic ass TV for retro gaming, $300. Like,
you should search TV, not CRT. A lot of folks that don't know what they have, they're not going to use the word CRT. They're going to use TV or old tube TV, and just put a minus and game or gaming, because you don't want those folks who are just like, this is a gaming TV, it's $250. You can get a good Sony Trinitron still, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be a Trinitron, it could be a Tau, it could be a D series, but the point is, you can get a nice like 20-inch or 32-inch gaming, sorry, not gaming TV, but CRT with S video, and you'll love it. Like, you get a Saturn S video cable, you do S video or even component, you're going to love it, and you're going to get a lot more quality than what you would have to shell out for in order to get that kind of quality on a flat panel, So that's the thing, And the speakers in a lot of those TVs are actually pretty good too.
Absolutely. And, as long as you have the room, and remember, 13-inch TVs, this big.
Yeah.
Respectfully, it's probably going to look better through composite than 480p on a 4K flat panel, maybe even 720.
Yeah.
Depending on what, if you have a really cheap LCD, like the one I use in all my videos, just to prove how you can make a cheap LCD look decent, but a cheap ghosting LCD versus even in 1080p versus a basic ass CRT and composite,
right?
CRT wins.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to chime in real quick. Sorry.
Oh, hey, Pat.
Hey, I just want to chime in real quick about the CRT stuff. If you're looking for good, trying to find good deals on like CRTs and PVMs, go to there's some states have post-production, like lists of post-production studios and e-cycling. Just send out mass emails, and usually some of them will reply. They'll have some, and they won't. So I've gotten about 3 or 4 PVMs doing that, and it's been pretty decently priced.
Nice.
For what the going rate is, so I would highly recommend that. I just wanted to chime in real quick. I'm gonna go back to producing real quick.
Okay, well, that's a good tip. Yeah, you could go knocking.
The one thing I just wanted to address to Genki Droid. Sorry, Genki Droid. Okay, said, what about like a Bang & Olufsen MX 4002? Some TVs past a certain point weren't just basic 15 kilohertz TVs.
Right.
So any 100 kilohertz, any HD
ED
CRT,
TVs.
Yeah, those are all hit or miss.
Right.
I have one sitting right there that is 0 lag. It does 240p wrong. That just means from PS2 and Dreamcast on, it's in GameCube. It's amazing. But that depends on the TV. You have to test it to make sure.
Yeah.
So that could be a ridiculous, holy crap, amazing TV, or it could be only good for PS2 or only good for Dreamcast, or you got to test it. So if it can accept 480p or higher, you just got to be careful.
Yeah, a lot of those Vegas with component inputs, the later Sony Vegas, especially the widescreen ones, had processing built in, and it wasn't very good. It was like early processing.
2 to 3 frames of lag, and everything was scaled to 1080i.
Yes.
And if you think about it from the time, that means it takes every 480i TV broadcast and every 480i DVD and scales it to 1080i. That's amazing and brilliant, and holy crap, that's great. But in the context of video games, it's like, well, that's terrible.
I know.
Unless you're playing PS2, and then it's probably fine. So.
It would be a great PS2 TV. Like Gran Turismo 4 and 1080i, or any 480p title. Force 480p on that, because it could do it over component. You'd have something that looks really nice. But yeah, it handles the 240p games pretty bad. It's almost, and it's a shame too, because it's a tube CRT, but the result is still the same. It's just going on a flat panel. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, to be honest, at the end of the day, the only CRT I would tell you not to buy is one with burn-in whereas one that's so dim that you can barely see it and you can't, and the brightness is already up. Every other one of them will have a use, and if it's the only thing available to you, grab it and work from there. So
yeah. It tends to be, if you're looking at CRTs, even late Sonys, if you find a 4x3, it usually is, 240, it handles 240p just right. If you find anything that's like 16:9, usually that was like when they started adding, the interlaced, deinterlacing and the scaling and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, last night I played Thunder in Paradise on a 13-inch Toshiba CRT. It was just a basic consumer TV, one of the ones with the DVD player built in, and it looked amazing.
Yeah.
The composite video blended that low-quality FMV together to just make it look neat. It looked like an over-the-air broadcast. It was awesome. So.
Another thing I will say, though, is that if you do have a TV like that, a lot of those late Sony CRTs did have HDMI inputs. And DVD, because of all the newer scalers that are coming out, DVD edges are getting cheaper. In fact, I think Kay is trying to offload his. He's trying to sell his. They just don't go for what they used to. And DVD edge originally came out as a solution to, deinterlacing and scaling DVDs, to make them look good for like the newer flat panels and stuff. And it does handle 240p correctly. So you can get something like that for relatively cheap and plug that into one of those later CRTs. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but I mean, nowadays it's just easier to go get like a Rad 2X, because you'd still be looking good with 240p, or sorry, 480p.
Yeah, 480p.
Line doubles too.
James Oliver said the AV5 and some early Avant models can play Philips CDI games, and some of them have a VCR built in.
Wow.
Yeah, all right. I'm sorry, we need to just hold the freak up for a minute. So there's a CRT that has a VCR built in and a DVD player that could also play CDI games. If you Held from Wrestling with Gaming doesn't have one of these, the world is going to end.
The world's going to end. He's got to get
one of those.
Yeah, he's got to get one so he can make a documentary on it. Or do a stream in a bathroom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're doing it. Yeah, if there's anything I could tell you to watch of mine, which is funny because I make $0 off of any of it, just go to my Twitter account and look for, it's hashtag CDI Exterminator, like Exterminator, EX Terminator. Yeah. That video that Yahel and I did with Ronnie and Kendall, my friend on drums, a ridiculously good drummer, and my buddy Mark from Answer Infinity mixed it. Like, that's my favorite thing I've ever done, because we took the Terminator soundtrack and we somehow made it about being angry at this Philips CDI, and we got Jimmy Hoppa in there doing the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger and some badass metal version of the Terminator theme song. Yeah, I don't know. It's my favorite thing I've ever done. So yeah, definitely go check that out, because I'm oddly a fan of the CDI for whatever reason. So
yeah, cool. Well, we got to wrap. We actually do have to wrap on this stream because I gotta jump. But I do want to thank all of our $10 Patreon supporters. I want to thank Blue Moon 95, Tanuki Trev, Shadow Mask. Thank you, man. Derek, A Team, Super Dimension Century Orgus, and Ian Keg. Thank you all for supporting us at the $10 level. We really appreciate you guys. And thank you to all of our other Patreon supporters. Your names show up in the credits, but if you guys want to be shouted on the show, then you can always support us at the $10 level, and we'll shout you on the show. We really appreciate everyone who even gives $1. It means a lot to us. It helps us support the podcast. It helps us host the website. It helps us do all this awesome stuff, and we really appreciate you guys. Thanks, Bob, for giving us your time. I know you're super busy, and you kind of pack your schedule.
I want to thank your Patreon supporters for a moment as well, because honestly, the supporting at the lowest level makes a difference. So thank you, because I want to see SHIRO continue. I want to see all the cool stuff they do. Yes. And there's going to come a point where that's not going to happen without you. So thank you to all of you. Thank you for enabling these wonderful people to make Saturn content that I'm going to enjoy and love and hopefully be a part of sometime. So thank you for having me on. Thank you to the Patreon supporters for allowing me to be on here at all. And Pat, good luck, man. That's a long stream in the middle of the night. Good luck to you. I'll tune in a couple of times and see how you're doing.
Yeah, same. And as Bob said, thank you to all of our supporters. If you can't support, that's totally fine. Join our Discord, just engage in the community, contribute in the discussion. And you can always go to threadless.segasaturnshiro.com and support us by buying a shirt or a hoodie. You can share the stream. That's a huge way to support us. Share it with your friends, family, people on Facebook, people on Twitter. It all helps.
Share the Patreon link.
Yes.
If you're not in a position to support, just tweet out, yell out if you see somebody with a Sega Saturn in their hands, be like, do you support Sega Saturn Shiro on Patreon? Like, telling your friends is almost as important as supporting itself. So if you're not in a position, you get it, but like, tell your friends.
Absolutely. And until next time, it's just SaturnDave and Bob from RetroRGB reminding you that you must play Sega Saturn, and peace out.